Operative Grave is reporting in. Researcher, a pleasure, as always. Last time we spoke, we sent notice to our bases in South Asia and the Pacific Northwest. Orders were, keep eyes open and, if possible, detain an SCP-1000 instance for interrogation. We recently got an update from Chaos Team Alpha 3, Mountain Men, located at Base 16 in Washington State. Take a listen.
Alpha 1, Overwatch, confirm status, night assets green, over. Overwatch, Alpha 1 TL, on the creek line, 3 clicks south, grid 6 delta, NVG on, movement up ahead, faint thermal. 2 contacts, possible warn, maintaining bearing 330, eyes only, over. Copy, eyes only, engage non-lethal first, UAVs overhead, switching to your channel in 30, keep comms tight, over. Alpha 1 TL, Alpha 2, contact bearing 315, tall silhouette, hunched, appears to be using cover, slow, intelligent movement, thermal signature irregular, low heat along shoulders, over. Alpha 3, lower flank, Alpha 2, mark landmark, dead birch with 2 notches, do not illuminate, evade with sound trap on my mark, over. Solid copy, flank 30 meters, no muzzle, understood, over. Alpha 1, we're picking up a second signature, moving parallel on the ridge. UAV locked, feeding you visuals in 5. Standby channel, CI, UAV, over. UAV inbound, visual on 2 large, bipedal entities, bearing 300 relative to Alpha 1, speed approximately 6 km per hour, switching to IR mode. Copy UAV, we're seeing them, one's larger, keep stopping to listen. It's using broken tree cover as camouflage, over. We're clear for progressive containment, rule of engagement, non-lethal priority. If it breaks into open populated zone, we escalate, over. Roger, we'll push uphill and force them to higher ground where we can channel them into the canyon. Alpha 3 shadow, but not too close. Alpha 4, ready with net launcher, containment crate, over. Net and crate ready. I've got eyes on the smaller one. It's starting to circle us from the left, over. Alpha 1, we're tracking a third thermal signature moving downhill toward a ridgeline trail. They may be attempting to draw you up. Maintain lateral spacing. UAV will guide your vector. Over. Copy. We're breaking to vertical. Everyone, tighten harness. Watch footing. Alpha 2, you're on visual. Alpha 4, prep darting. Alpha 5, medic. 2 rounds of sedative on deck. Over. Visual. Target moving into exposed ridge. It's pausing, looking toward the valley. Behavior indicates scanning for egress routes. Over. Marking ridge crest. Elevation plus 320 meters. Recommend containment at canyon mouth. Deploy barrier charges on my mark to deny escape. Over. Negative on barrier charges, unless you have containment capture window. We only seal if primary capture fails. Proceed with containment protocol Delta 7. Over. Understood. Move to plan B. Bait the ridge, then net. Alpha 3, your point. Quietly. Over. Contact. Bearing 10 meters. It's at the canyon mouth. It sees the bait. It's running our way. Over. Hold. Hold. Non-lethal first. Alpha 4, net. Now. Alpha 5, medic. Prep antidote in case of exposure. Over. Net hit. But it's tearing through composite. Not for containment. It's resisting. It's strong. Alpha 2, tracer on left shoulder. Try tranquilizer V2. Over. Firing V2. Dart impact. Target convulsing. No. It's vocalizing. High frequency but deliberate. Over. Alpha 1, we've got visual. Target is down, but not unconscious. Consider immediate extraction. It may have companions. UAV picking up movement at canyon rim. Over. Negative. We bring back one alive. Lockdown perimeter. Alpha 3, form a ledge. Alpha 5, approach. Do not make direct eye contact if possible. Sedative only on my cue. Over. It's uttering clicks and a vocal pattern that may be trying to mimic human cadence. I'm reading neural spikes. Possible advanced cognition. Over. Copy on neural spikes. Extraction is green. Drone will hold until extraction team lifts. HVT crate inbound in T-minus 30. Prepare restraints, over. For stabilizing the subject, field level dispatching the med channel now. Keep comms minimal. Capture footage intact. Alpha 1, out.
Fantastic, isn't it? We did what those Foundation chumps couldn't. Delta Command has the SCP-1000 instance contained at one of our black sites at the moment. They're working on the language barrier with our top linguists, but it'll take some time, and that's if the instance wants to speak to us. But if not, we have our ways of encouragement. We should hopefully have some updates sometime next week. But for now, take a seat. We have quite the file to look at today. Allow me to log into the archive. The file we'll be looking at today is SCP-2747. Object Class Keter, formerly Euclid. Threat Level Black, formerly Green. Special Containment Procedures. Foundation watchdog algorithms are to monitor online and print media for mention of SCP-2747 positive key phrases. All matches are to be tagged and forwarded to the Department of Analytics, which will provide further confirmation of SCP-2747 manifestation. In case of positive identification, all affected media are to be suitably corrected via standard Foundation media alteration protocols. 912-A, Twilight Zone. 943-A, Poisoned Well. The next portion of the file reads, Observational Procedure, Lucid Chalice. Controlled observation of SCP-2747 will take place using local computing resources to procedurally generate narratives at varying levels of complexity and necessitedness. Simultaneously, descriptions of the narratives are to be generated using Foundation media parsing, analytic/meta-analytic software at varying degrees of abstraction. The results can be examined for signs of SCP-2747 by periodically scanning for data irregularities. Any generated narrative containing such irregularities can then be flagged as an instance for SCP-2747, with its seed conditions subsequently tagged as SCP-2747 conducive. Given a large enough sample size, the boundary conditions of SCP-2747 can then be identified and mapped with a sufficient degree of clarity. Furthermore, a watch list of 7,000 artists is to be maintained and observed at all times for localized signs of SCP-2747 manifestation in their respective works using the aforementioned analytic/meta-analytic software. In order to increase the observable resolution and range of deeply nested metafictional manifestations, this watchlist should consist mainly of individuals, groups, and organizations whose works tend toward containing metafictional content, such as Mizanabim and Stories Within Stories. The sponsoring and/or covert influencing of such content creators can be sanctioned to that end. The results of Lucid Chalice will be documented within the current documentation as Appendix B. Description: SCP-2747 is a phenomenon appearing in print and online media whereby platforms dedicated to the discussion of works of fiction begin to mention a non-existent instance of fictional media. Despite said non-existence, articles, posts, comments, and other related meta-content created with regard to the non-existent work of fiction will be found treating it as real. The non-existent work of fiction can be mentioned by various individuals in varying capacities, ranging from brief mentions in forum posts to being the subject of entire academic essays. Descriptions, screenshots, photographs of physical copies, and brief segments of text from said work of fiction can often be discovered in SCP-2747 affected media. Descriptions of it are entirely consistent with each other, and it has proven possible to reconstruct whole segments of fictitious media via descriptions of it taken from SCP-2747 generated metacontent. A list of fictitious media generated by SCP-2747 has been appended below. See Appendix A. Where possible, the affected material can be traced to existing individuals. However, when questioned under duress, said individuals invariably deny having written the affected material and deny all existence of the fictitious media mentioned within. SCP-2747 has never been documented in real time. All observed instances thus far have been recorded post hoc. No instances have been documented prior to January 2008. The reason for this confirms to pataphysical observations documented in full in Appendix B. It is the current hypothesis of the Department of Analytics that SCP-2747 represents evidence of a naturally occurring Anafabula, or anti-narrative, a cluster of independent signs, iconography, and narramemes. A narrameme is defined as a base unit of a narrative, much in the same way that a mytheme denotes a base unit of a myth, or a meme denotes a base unit of culture. That, when included to a sufficient extent within a fictional construct, leads to a mutual annihilation. First-hand reconstruction of the Anafabula's properties is impossible given its anomalous nature, but second-hand and third-hand descriptions have been generated from observational procedure, lucid chalice, and appended below. See Appendix B. It can affect through layers of metafictional narrative, i.e., a meta-narrative containing the Anafabula will cease to exist within the narrative, followed by the narrative itself disappearing from our reality. This interpretation of pataphysical reality, layers of metafictional narrative, has yet to be verified by Foundation of observations at large, but appear concurrent with observations obtained from transfictional anomalies such as SCP-1304, SCP-2614, and 001. The key identifier of the Anafabula is that it invariably represents an in-universe antagonist, or anathema, in all manifestations of SCP-2747, likely due to inherent narrameme components indicating its alien, yet centralizing, nature. Update. The above-mentioned hypothesis has been confirmed as a working model of SCP-2747. Please refer to Appendix B. Update. The following procedures are to be enacted following the successful conclusion of observational procedure Lucid Chalice. See Appendix B. At no time are the properties of the Anafabula as outlined in Appendix B to arise in real life, whether as a result of deliberate or natural action. Any object, person, or event bearing more than significance level alpha to the semblance threshold is to be altered via all means necessary. Access to information regarding SCP-2747, especially the information contained within Appendix B, is to be strictly limited to clearance levels 4-2747 and 3-analytics. Due to the pataphysical implications and inherent uncontainability of SCP-2747 as detailed in Appendix B, it is to be classified as Keter with immediate effect. Appendix A. Partial list of manifestations of SCP-2747. Non-existent work referenced. Punta de la Espira. Medium. Short story. Extent of manifestation. 17 articles created and edited on wikipedia.org. Summary of work. Punta de la Espira, English, Tip of the Spire, or Spiral, is apparently a 1951 short story by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It describes an unnamed protagonist as he sails down a river towards a desolate, black-horned mountain in order to deliver a gift to an unspecified recipient. The journey is rough and treacherous, and he dies of exhaustion at the end of the story, appearing to be no closer to his goal than when he first began. The mountain is described in detail throughout the story, with reoccurring metaphors alternatingly alluding to it either as an abode to the gods or a demonic presence. Non-existent work referenced. Taitaro. The film's title is a description of itself. It is the Japanese phonetic pronunciation for the English word title. Medium. Animated film. Extent of manifestation. One article created on tvtropes.org, with 55 edits made to various tropes ranging from Despair Event Horizon to Foreshadowing and What Do You Mean It Wasn't Made on Drugs? Summary of work. Taitaro appears to be an animated film directed by Satoshi Kon shortly before his death. It is described as a psychological thriller chronicling a struggling manga artist as she attempts to complete and publish her first work under a tight deadline. Stress takes its toll and boundaries blur. She begins to hallucinate, and the movie ends ambiguously as to whether she has achieved her goal or succumbed to her weaknesses. Typical of Khan's style, the animation is described as meticulous, kaleidoscopic, and occasionally deeply disturbing. One scene features the protagonist physically grappling with the shadows in her apartment, described under the trope entry for Your Mind Makes It Real as the manifestation of her creative block, which eventually engulf and consume her. Non-existent work referenced. No Sister of Mine. Medium. Video game. Extent of manifestation. 77 threads on forums.somethingawful.com, each carrying between 3 to 103 comments. Most users were established members of the Something Awful community. Summary of work. No Sister of Mine is supposedly a turn-based role-playing game of the fantasy horror genre published by FoePound. While FoePound existed as a major game development studio operating out of Seoul between 2002 and 2005, no record of No Sister of Mine has ever been found. For the Nintendo GameCube in 2005, according to reviewers, the player controls a party of 6 unnamed characters as they explore a ruined kingdom with the intention of finding a lost companion referred to as Sister. It is widely panned by the reviewers, with much criticism being leveled at the glitch-filled battle system, incoherent dialogue, seemingly incomplete graphics, repetitive soundtrack described as nauseating and headache-inducing, as well as it being impossible to complete. The game's non-playable characters continuously mention a coal-black, thorn-bound tome that, when read from, would enable one to either obtain great power or unleash a dreadful curse. What most reviewers assured to be the final quest line required the player to backtrack through the game's previous areas and recover fragments of the tome using their newfound abilities. However, the reviewers unanimously claim that no fragments can be found. One reviewer goes as far as to claim that the items themselves were never found inside the game's coding in the first place. Non-existent work referenced. The Scalapendra Wiki. Medium. Collaborative fiction. Extent of manifestation. 49 different pieces of fanfiction, ranging from 343 to 2,401 words in length, posted on fanfiction.net, each bearing between 1 and 6 comments. Summary of work. The Scalapendra Wiki is deduced to being an online collaborative fiction universe belonging to the horror, speculative fiction, and weird fiction genres. It appears to have been hosted on some sort of wiki site, though the address itself is never mentioned. The exact nature of Scalapendra's plot is hard to discern, as the various pieces of fanfiction sport vastly differing storylines and a range of character interpretations, further complicated by the involvement of other fictional universes and settings. What is known is that it involves a cast of 7 characters, wandering between a series of realms, amassing and collecting items possessing supernatural or abnormal properties. One item features heavily throughout the compiled works, a 7-sided obsidian emblem, said to possess the power to destroy an object, person, or abstract concept with a single touch. It appears to be of great interest to the protagonist, who repeatedly make attempts to acquire it. However, it also appears to be currently in the possession of a sinister unnamed antagonist, who was alluded to repeatedly in several works, yet is never seen. Non-existent work referenced. I/O. Medium. Musical album. Extent of manifestation. Review columns in total of 14 reputable publications, including the New Bombay Times, Pitchfork, and LA Flipside. Summary of work. I/O is described as the 9th studio album by the now-defunct English rock band Radiohead. It contains 6 tracks measuring a total of 34 minutes and 18 seconds. The vast majority of tracks appear to consist mostly of digitally manipulated samples from Radiohead's previous albums, layered over with sparse acoustic instrumentation and vocals. Reception of the album appears to be highly positive, with the exception of Pitchfork's Jesse Green, who gave it an average review of 7. In particular, Green felt the album suffered from hasty and uncoordinated post-production, likely not undertaken by Radiohead themselves. Audio cuts between the 5th and 6th track were described to be unnecessarily jarring, giving the seamless flow between every other track in the album. It is mentioned that the album uses a characteristic grating binaural reverb layered over the lead singer Thom Yorke's solo vocal track as a musical motif embodying what the New Bombay Times' Gulshan Andrew believes to be its central themes of spirals of isolation and inspiration, of feedback loops that resonate into the level of deeply personal, the troubling core of creative psyche. Andrew also mentions lyrics referencing suicide and self-harm, though presented through a series of oblique metaphors. I/O never fears to toy with the idea of self-hatred and self-desecration, yet the album as a whole seems to fall short of its mark, always orbiting yet never quite touching upon the dreadful center. Non-existent work referenced. Mavine, or a treatise on the metaphysics of inner space travel and the kingdom of Erikar, whose name is darkness made light, and further theological expositions thereof. Medium. Novel. Extent of manifestation. 7 articles published in a single week in various academic journals of literary criticism, each by reputable scholars. Mavine is described as the contents of a manuscript and accompanying charcoal illustrations found in the house of Anafabula Abrahams in 2014. Abrahams appeared to be a reclusive writer and artist working as a maintenance technician in Bloemfontein, South Africa, and clinically diagnosed with schizophrenia. A number of individuals partially match this description, though no similar work to Mavine exists. Mavine is a nested frame narrative written in Afrikaans. Purporting to be a novel by a 17th century Dutch mystic, it describes the journey of the mystic, whose name is clearly only given as Maas, learning of the structure of the Earth's interior as revealed to him in a vision. At the beginning of the novel, Maas dreams of a supernatural being that is aware of its nature as a dream entity and is highly indebted to Maas for bringing it into existence. In exchange, it promises to divulge to Maas the secrets of the Earth. Maas, being corporeal, is unable to pass through the ground, and so the being decides to simply narrate the journey. It speaks of 6 realms demarcated by thresholds ranging from the realm of treasure and minerals to an intangible plane of light and sound. Beyond these 6 realms lies another threshold, this time one of cold and silence, which is described to be the Earth's core. Before it can be elaborated upon, Maas wakes and the dream ends. Non-existent work reference. X Lux. Medium. Interactive novel. Extent of manifestation. In-depth posts on 7 different fiction review blogs, along with a mention in a Time magazine article. The End. Chow Ingrid. Time. Issue 35, 2008. On experimental narrative forums. The title is also mentioned in 175 Twitter posts, largely in the context of recommending it as an interesting, if underrated, piece of interactive fiction. Summary of work. X Lux appears to be a work of interactive fiction of the mystery genre, written in a mixture of English, Catalan, and Spanish. It is presented as a set of epistolary narratives from the point of view of 6 characters in a stream of consciousness narration of ambiguous provenance. Readers navigate between the 7 story threads, discovering hints of a murder or several murders. Eventually, the narratives converge at a roadside diner during a thunderstorm, and the characters exchange their stories. From here, the resultant narrative structure cannot adequately be described, as simple framing devices or stories within stories as the inner tales eventually begin to intertwine, such that later tales shed new light on ones recounted earlier, or themselves link to segments of text earlier on the narrative, after lengthy detours. After several points, characters attempt to consult the testimony of an absent individual, referred to as the Stranger. The identity of the murderers or victims is never known, nor does the story have a conventional ending. Appendix B. Observations and Conclusions from Lucid Chalice.
Data lost.
This is something else. An Anafabula. Dangerous. Extremely dangerous. But what if it could be directed in some way to fit our goals? We have the ability to reproduce Operation Lucid Chalice with this information. I'll send this file over to our Department of Metatextual Engineering and Countermeasures. With their help, maybe this phenomenon can be weaponized against the Foundation, or at least directed towards them. Well, that's all for today, researcher. Dismissed.